of health that shows that you're okay to run for office or have this office, and he said me being here is enough. And to me, that's not enough. People, you talk about this all the time, and you want to see your leader being healthy. I think aside from that, though, he also said some things that didn't make any sense. So he told Dr. Oz, like, listen, you what did he say? He said, oh, you were going to get rid of all Social Security, and Dr. Oz vehemently denied it and said, okay, give me an example. And he was stuck for words. He didn't say a word about it. He also said all of a sudden he supports fracking. He's been anti-fracking for years.
That was a change.
And now all of a sudden he's like, I just do, and I'm not going to explain it. And so no explaining your bill of health, no explaining the fracking. It just was a very terrible debate to me and a full disaster on top of the communication being poor. And it's the only one that we're going to see. So I don't think that anybody that was maybe in the middle or confused about who they were voting for is now going with Fetterman at all.
Interesting. Okay, Al, what was your take? I like that's a very interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, we've learned that Fetterman ran probably the most effective ad campaign against Dr. Oz in terms of just legendary roastings.
Yeah.
Legendary roastings of Dr. Oz.
Because he's not from Pennsylvania originally.
But that was just the tip of it. I mean, it was really embarrassing. And as for, you know, his inability to communicate, I grew up with an uncle that stuttered. I think a lot of people have grown up with people that have communication issues. And when I think about, you know, somebody running for the seat, they're not running the 2-minute offense for the 49ers. They don't need to communicate quickly. How many words have you heard Kamala Harris say since she's been vice president? We don't hear these people talk anyway. What I need is action behind
effective communication has been a point of contention for Kamala specifically, because sometimes she's laughing in awkward moments. And she's a black woman, so I support her. I appreciate what she's doing, and there's her presence there. But sometimes communication really does matter. And if you look at what Dr. Oz did, he closed it with a beautiful argument asking people, are you happier today with this high inflation and this environment than you were 4 years ago, 2 years ago? And he's asking everyone. And so to leave it there, you have to be effectively communicating in order to lead people. And it's unfortunate that Fetterman is struggling, but you have to be an effective communicator.
Well, I think
we have a stutterer as a president, do we not?
We have a stutterer as a president, and I think what we always forget, and you know, a lot of times when there's Republican attack ads and they go with the, you know, single mother household, what they don't realize is that's also a lot of their constituents. And I think a lot of their constituents also are dealing with people that have strokes, also have, you know, aunts and uncles that can't move half their body. So this idea of like he had a stroke, so he is now an irrelevant human being, especially in terms of like he cannot participate in society and govern effectively, I think that a lot of people secretly take that as a shot against them. You look at the way that gay marriage and the attack on gay folks went way down in the Republican Party, because what they realize is everybody has gay people in their family.
Say it loud.
And I think it's the same situation that we're talking about here.
That's fair.
So when we talk about people that may seem disabled, trying to marginalize them could backfire against you, because a lot of people are dealing with
it's relatable in that
like
way.
This.
But a lot of people have the opportunity to hear their candidate that they're supporting for the issues talk about the issues. And so if it's not communicated effectively where you stand on the issues, like let's just say the fracking thing, if people in Pennsylvania are heavily affected by that and really are adamant about their stance, whether it's they want it or they don't want it, and you're just like, I decided after all these years I changed my mind, I think people just want to know why. And you can communicate that after having had a stroke. But my point is that he didn't communicate.
I agree with you on the
in a world of single issue voters, abortion, guns, do you think fracking is on that list?
For Pennsylvania, it's a huge issue.
However, let's talk about abortion, because the big elephant in the room is what Dr. Oz said that's gone extremely viral that I have to bring up. I agree with you. Fetterman didn't produce a really good show, and it made him look a bit weak, and it made me nervous, and I don't like my politicians to make me nervous. But when asked about abortion, Dr. Oz clearly
Dick Cheney
said
have a bunch of heart procedures?
He did, and he shot someone in the face. But in the meantime, Dr. Oz was asked about abortion, and his response was it should be between a woman, her doctor, and local political leaders. That's gone viral today. It's like, what else needs to be in the room? A clown car of people to come in? He also, Fetterman, raised $1 million right after the debate. So people are pouring in, I think, because of that comment, I think, against Dr. Oz, but the Fetterman issue is still a big question.
I think Dr. Oz as a doctor could have took that moment.
I could not believe he said
could just
that.
say he stands by where the Supreme Court decided 50 years ago.
Correct.
Right? You don't have to take that stance. You don't have to do that. And so then Fetterman easily attacked him right there and said, okay, so you want it to be up to you. If you want Dr. Oz to decide if you have a baby, go ahead and pick Dr. Oz. And so that was a good moment for Fetterman during the debate, I can say.
And I think that is the moment of the debate, because I think $1 million is a tsunami against the Roe v. Wade situation. And when Dr. Oz said that, the idea that for smaller government, if you're a conservative, you want more people in the room making decisions for a woman's health care seems absolutely absurd to me. So I think people really took that moment as the moment of the debate. But I have to be honest, Lindsay is correct. It didn't look great for Fetterman. It wasn't a great debate for Fetterman. Although he raised
but
that
I don't know
money.
what else they could have done, because a lot of people are like, why would you even send Fetterman out? Why wouldn't you send someone else? But you know, you have to come speak to the people. He said he's doing tours around the city and around the state. So you know, it's kind of a tough decision as a campaign. What do we do next?
And he's not the best speaker too. So what do you do at that point in terms of a debate? He's great speaking just by himself, but not a great debater. So interesting take. Let us know what you think and about that big moment with Dr. Oz. Did you like it? Did you not like it? We want to hear from you.
I like your cuffs.
Do you guys like these?
Those are a good accent.
What are these called again?
Sleeves.
Wow. Coming up on DBL, uncovering America's true crime obsession. We talk with a mental health expert about the fascination with the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Kanye loses his billionaire status as more companies drop partnerships with him. Should Spotify remove his music?
Closed captioning provided by...
I'm easily tickled, y'all. It doesn't take much.
I'm gonna sit here and be right.
I know y'all gonna be mad at me, but I'm just telling you the truth.
You can smirk all you want. You don't have to tell me to go.
Brad Pitt.
Okay, are we on?
Yeah.
All
A
right.
bell sleeve, I think.
A bell sleeve?
We're trying to figure out the
Witch's
name of it.
sleeves?
It's like bell bottoms on your shirt.
A flare?
I don't know if it's flare.
It's a little bit of flare.
Remember flare leg pants?
It's a little bit of flare.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tori,
I
we
wanted
didn't
to
hear
also...
from you. What did you think about the debate in general? Do you think it's really going to hurt him?
I think Dr. Oz the biggest moment of that night was when Dr. Oz said local political leaders should be making women's healthcare decisions. That went viral very quickly. And I thought it was interesting. Michael Moore, and I want to know your take on this. You know Michael Moore,
the documentarian.
Yeah, from Flint, Michigan. He said there will be a tsunami of a blue wave because of Roe v. Wade. I believe that too. I got a lot of pushback from you guys about that, saying you don't think that's true. Do you guys think I'm wrong? I think overturning Roe will bring droves of people to the ballot.
Are we talking about that story in the show about how people are like, I don't know
That's
a lot of
next.
people who are Republicans that are like, oh my gosh, yes, I really care about the next woman's body and what they do with it. Like, that's not like, so now that it's on the ballot, it's like this thing that's like, how did we get here? Like, we had the Supreme Court, and if you're an institutionalist and you believe in our government, right, so then why are we even going back on this? So I think now that it's we stepped in it, you gotta like commit, but some people, you can't be honest and look in the mirror and say you commit to that all the time.
Yeah.
That you really, if that wasn't a main issue for you any other time prior to this.
Well, I don't think it was a main issue because I don't think that people ever thought that we would ever see this day. But now I think people are, even if they're past the age of being able to have a child, the idea of like their niece or nephew having a child at 14 or 15, a lot of people are sexually active way before they're 18. I taught middle school. I'm aware of this, and people look at their daughters and sons.
You know what I like when our employees are smiling? Smiling Joel. We love that. All right, welcome back. The fallout continues for Kanye, who, according to Forbes, has completely lost his billionaire status. Thankfully,
Tell me about it.
Al is
That
so
happened to me
upset about
Thursday.
that. Yep. Thanks to his anti-Semitic rants, Foot Locker has become the latest company to cut ties with him just a day after Adidas announced they're ending their $1.5 billion deal and will stop all production of their Yeezy brand sneakers. Speaking of which, Al was correct. Yeezy shoes are way up on resale sites, with prices climbing a reported 50%.
Tori, I didn't hear, what did you say I was?
Al was right.
Oh, I thought you said completely correct. Okay.
Now Spotify, the giant music streaming service, is facing pressure to remove Kanye's music. Spotify says for now his music will remain because it doesn't contain any of the offensive speech that's gotten so much attention and does not violate their policy. But their question we are asking is, should Kanye's music be removed even if it doesn't violate their policy? Thoughts. And I just want to let you know that Google is now trending the search "sell Yeezy" because people want to know, should they sell now? Should they sell later? So everyone's up in arms about the Yeezys. Talk to me about that and Spotify.
Well, if you bought those expensive shoes, you got to do something with them. If you could decidedly are saying, I'm not with Kanye or anything, any brand that he represents, then wearing them around the town is going to be awkward.
Yeah.
And, like,
what about keeping them in a shoebox and waiting for them to appreciate and value for another year? Would you do that if you owned a pair?
Well, if I had them, yeah, I want my money back because you got them
Plus
with the investment in Kanye or the investment that you like that swag. So, like, please give me my money back if I'm never going to wear them because I'm embarrassed to walk out of the house with them. I would love my money back.
Yeah.
And so I think, that's one thing. But also Spotify, I think Spotify has told us that they're going to just do whatever they want to do. I think that's been a consistent thing. And they don't have direct business with Kanye aside from, like, his stream. So they're like, don't loop us in with, like, Adidas.
Don't put us in with that.
We know why they were wrong, right? They're like, we have music on our platform and we've always separated. And even when they stood behind Joe Rogan endlessly, no matter what, they told you, like, listen, we don't want to be in your cancel culture situation. We're just going to go ahead and operate on our thing. And if I am correct, I think Spotify also is not an American company. So they're kind of just like,
we're not part of
what do we
this.
have to do with this?
Yeah, I think Spotify has a good argument here. They're like, none of the albums, if it was Kanye doing spoken word and he was saying these kinds of things, now we have a discussion. But as far as I know, you can still find Kevin Spacey movies on Netflix. People that we have deemed in our culture to be toxic or whatever word that we're using that day. I think that not allowing people to access the art that they created, I think, and I'm not a slippery slope person, I think that could be a problem. I think if somebody still's like, I like the music, no different than I still like R. Kelly's music. If you would like to hear that, if you would like to hear Michael Jackson, if you would like to hear these kinds of people that have been toxic and controversial, I don't feel like that should be impeded upon.
I rarely do this, but I mean, I agree with Al. I mean, I don't rarely. But what I'm saying is they are not, to me, the Adidas, just like you said, they are not part of that group. Again, if you have Michael Jackson on there and you have whatever, Joe Rogan and whatever there is, the argument is that free speech for them, whatever their policy is free speech, and that's a blanket statement. And anything you do will just be a slippery slope. So
and it just doesn't stop with one. Like, if you're going to get rid of one, you have to get rid of everybody who ever said anything offensive, including movies. And that you just do a clean sweep. It's why people started getting irritated by cancel culture, because then we started going to Dr. Seuss, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, chill out.
We're going to switch to the Disney movies. We're going to put a disclaimer, but it just starts to go on and on and on. And people are like just ready for new films.
Yeah,
ready for new music.
I would ask media outlets, and I would like to say it out loud to you guys and you.
Aren't you on a media outlet right now?
I am.
Okay.
I'd like to
use this one.
I'd like to wait a minute. I'd like us to stop giving Kanye, though, any outlets in terms of his speaking. I don't need another interview. I don't want to hear another podcast. I would just like to discuss what we think. I don't need to hear from him anymore.
But people want to hear from him.
I don't care. To me, he's a bigot, and I don't want to hear from him. That's fine if you want to listen on Spotify, but no more podcasts, no more reporting on what crazy stuff he's doing, because it only gives him more attention, in my opinion. Although we're doing that right now. Coming up on DBL, what's behind the obsession with true crime? A mental health expert joins us to talk about the popularity of the Dahmer Netflix series. Is this you? Are you watching? Stay tuned.
The CDC recommends kids get all sorts of vaccines by a certain age, including chickenpox and hepatitis. On October 20th, the CDC voted to add COVID-19 to that list. Verify viewer Jacob texted the team to ask whether the COVID-19 shot is going on a mandatory vaccine list for children. And lots of people questioned if this vote made it mandatory for kids to get the COVID-19 vaccine in order to go to school. So let's verify. Is the CDC requiring children to get the COVID-19 vaccine for school? Our sources are the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Javier Becerra, and the National Conference of State Legislatures. According to the NCSL, the CDC Advisory Committee cannot mandate which vaccines are required for children to attend school. This is determined by state law. U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Javier Becerra also confirmed that the CDC's decision is not about vaccination requirements, and any indication is otherwise untrue. So we can verify, no, the CDC isn't requiring children to get the COVID-19 vaccine for school. According to the NCSL, many states do align their vaccine requirements with the CDC's recommendations. But some states, like Florida, have explicitly banned student COVID-19 vaccine mandates. And other places, like DC, didn't wait for the CDC's decision to make the COVID-19 vaccine a requirement for their students. Kids 12 and older in DCPS were required to get the vaccine this year. With your Verify, I'm Ariande Till. Are you skeptical of headlines and what you see on social media? We are too. The Verify newsletter answers your questions. clarifies what's true and false, and even includes a daily fun fact. Go to verifythis.com/email to check it out.
Hello, this is Glenda Cleveland. Can you send an officer to the Oxford Apartments? Somebody is either being hurt or killed.
What do you want me to do, Miss Cleveland?
Your job.
Welcome back. That was a clip from the Netflix series Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story that we've been talking a lot about on our show. Well, earlier we sat down to talk about the psychology behind actually watching true crime with a licensed marriage and family therapist, Katie Morton. Check it out. Welcome back, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Katie, this is something that's so fascinating to me, and there are people out there that fall in love, we're going to jump right in, and idolize these serial killers. And I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. I want the death penalty for people like this, so we don't idolize these people. They don't get the opportunity, but they'll send letters and pictures and money and want to marry them. What is this obsession?
Yeah, I find it really interesting as well. The truth about it, I mean, there's mainly two core reasons. Number one, they get attention. Like you said, they're a celebrity, right? They're really powerful in a lot of ways, even as creepy as that may sound. And we're attracted to that celebrity and that attention. And then the second most common reason is honestly probably the way we were brought up, wanting to fix someone or, you know, be the person that makes them better. We can like people who are, I know this is a bad term, but broken. And some people like to get in relationships with those types of people.
Right, fascinating is the right word. And disturbing. Okay, so Katie, we spoke a lot about the family members of Dahmer victims when the series was released. I can't even imagine what they must have gone through and been re-traumatized. We also got some viewers saying that by accidentally hearing about it, it re-traumatized and re-triggered them from violent crime. So what are those individuals going through, and what are the family members going through?
I think it depends on the person. It depends on where they are in their process, you know, where they are in the healing of trauma. If we haven't fully processed it or we're still affected by it, then it's going to be incredibly triggering and possibly re-traumatizing, like those people who said, oh, it reminds me of my past, right? That can be really hurtful. And I would encourage those people to avoid the show if possible. But there might be a subset of people who are looking for some information or some fact that we didn't think about, or just something to give them closure. And so those people might tune in. They might actually find it helpful in their process. And so if anybody out there is, you know, on the fence about it, you know, talk with your therapist if you're seeing one. I hope you are. And, you know, be cautious and do what's best for you.
So, Katie, why are these true crime shows and podcasts so addicting to people? Especially, it seems to be addicting to women in particular.
Yeah, I'm one of those people too. I have to be honest. I love Law & Order SVU. Any crime show that's out there, I have watched it. The truth is that our nervous system is wired to seek out threat in our environment. It's always looking. It's adaptive, right? It keeps us alive. And so when we watch these shows, in a way, we're understanding a potential threat, right? Someone could break into my home, or someone could, you know, I don't know, mug me on the street. We know those threats are out there. And so by watching this, we get to know more about it. And the good thing, if you're a Law & Order SVU fan like I am, Olivia Benson and Stabler, they catch the bad guy. And then we're like, yay, I feel better, right? That threat is almost somewhat neutralized because I understand it and I can manage it, and I see the bad guys get caught. And I find women tend to be more in that bucket because, unfortunately, we're more at risk. I mean, my husband's never told me he's walked to his car with his keys between his fingers, but I do, you know, and there's a lot of things that I think men don't always understand about our experience. And so I think by and large, we are the ones that want to make sure we understand the threat and we know how to at least manage it, if not neutralize it.
Okay, quick question here because we only have 30 seconds left, but I really want to know, you said that you're consuming a lot of true crime, but that has to have some effect on you. So what effect does taking in a lot of true crime have on the individual?
Yeah, it can for some people. If it's getting in the way of your ability to sleep, that would probably be the first thing to go. If it's too much and it's affecting your functioning, we should probably minimize it or do what I call like a brain wash, where I'll watch some show that's just a little bit more mellow, like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, for example, just to kind of get my brain out of true crime mode so that I can go to sleep.
Great advice. Katie, we always appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us on DBL. And to our viewers, make sure to follow Katie's YouTube channel, which you can find just by searching Katie Morton. We'll be right back. Thanks, Katie.
Staying on top of this story, and that means not just tracking the numbers or health alerts, but finding out what you need to know in your own home about this virus. So we turn to several sources to verify. What is RSV? Short for respiratory syncytial virus. The CDC lists RSV symptoms of runny nose, decrease in appetite, coughing, sneezing, fever, and wheezing, typically appearing in stages rather than all at once. Dr. Ruth Cantula, MedStar pediatrician, says it's often hard to tell the difference between RSV and other common viruses, but it's very easy to transmit, spread through droplets of coughs and sneezes in the air or on infected surfaces where the virus can live for hours, or through direct contact. There's no vaccine to prevent it, and you can get it more than once at any age.
The most vulnerable populations are children who are less than 2 years old.
Our experts say babies are more prone to lower respiratory tract infections, plus inflammation of the airways or lungs from RSV, and can't naturally compensate for breathing issues like older kids and adults.
So if I can't breathe through my nose, I know I can breathe through my mouth. Babies don't know that necessarily.
RSV symptoms also tend to be more severe in adults age 65 and older. How is RSV treated? Most cases go away in a week or so, says the CDC, which recommends managing symptoms with over-the-counter meds and drinking plenty of fluids. RSV most often requires hospitalization because of dehydration or difficulty breathing. In babies, Dr. Cantula says poor feeding or irritability could also be signs they need more oxygen.
If you notice that your child's symptoms are lasting for a longer period than would be expected, that would be a reason to take your child in to have them evaluated by the pediatrician.
Avoid spreading RSV. Wash your hands, cover your mouth, keep your distance, and stay home when you're sick. Those back to basics health tips that are so good at preventing common seasonal bugs work here too. And that's important because some, adults especially, could have RSV and not even know it. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
Scientists say climate change is destroying wetlands along the North Carolina coast. Let's connect the dots. Once healthy wetlands now have miles of gray and barren trees. So what's happening? Frequent flooding caused by rising temperatures is killing plants. The salt in ocean water is slowly creeping into trees and destroying wetlands. Now the rising sea levels is causing forests to transition into marsh ecosystems. Scientists call them ghost forests. The phenomenon isn't new, but researchers say its spread is alarming. And the transition is happening faster than ever before. There are big impacts on what this means for the environment. Researchers say loads of carbon are stored in these trees, but they're all getting destroyed, hurting everything from plant life to the oxygen we breathe. And that's connecting the dots.
Welcome back. Thank you for someone saying they like my elf sleeves. Did you know many people suffer from joint pain and stiffness as the temperature drops? This is true for my mom. It's time for some joint and muscle support brought to you by Omega XL. So because of the winter chill, people experience joint aches and stiffness in their knees, their ankles, their hips. And if you have arthritis, the winter season heightens your existing pain. Here's what you can do about it though. First, dress really warmly. One of the best ways to avoid joint pain and stiffness is layering up, especially especially if you're going to go outside. The key is to keep those hands and feet covered and warm at all times. Next, engage in regular exercise. You want to boost your bone and muscle strength, and this will reduce the pressure on your joints, keeping them flexible and improving blood flow. And finally, when it comes to joint health, maintaining a healthy intake of vitamin D is essential. Vitamin D helps with joint healing, so get some sunlight, eat vitamin D-rich foods like fish, eggs, and oatmeal. Omega XL has improved the lives of millions of consumers, supported by 30 years of clinical research. Omega XL's powerful and proven benefits has transformed the lives of athletes, celebrities, and dedicated daily users. So call 1-800-686-5325 or visit omegaxl.com for more information. I got a recumbent bike so that in the winter I can stay active.
Wait, recumbent, the one that's low to the ground. You have that?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
We'll see you later.
No.
Bye, guys.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.